There comes a moment in life, often unnoticed, when the sound of the years changes. In youth, they rush past like a fast-flowing river, loud and eager. But as the seasons soften and our steps grow slower, we begin to sense something else beneath the surface, a quiet truth. It isn't the fear of dying that unsettles most hearts. It is the realization that we spent so many days in motion, yet so few truly awake to the life we were living. We race through calendars and cross off tasks, thinking we are chasing the future, yet what we hunger for has always been here. The stillness of a breath, the warmth of the present moment, the gentle nearness of our own soul. Years ago, I spent a winter high in the mountains of China, in a temple hidden among pine-covered slopes and drifting mist. The abbot was an elderly monk whose eyes carried the light of countless dawns. His days were simple, rising before the sun. He would sit by a wooden window overlooking a garden of moss and plum blossoms. One morning, as pale light spilled across the floor, he spoke without looking up. "When I was young, I thought I was chasing time. Now I see, time was always still. It was me who could not be still." His words were not heavy with regret, but gentle with understanding, the kind that only comes from living long enough to see that joy has nothing to do with the length of our days, and everything to do with how deeply we enter them. As the years turn, many of us begin to feel life's pace quicken. The months blend into seasons. A year ends before we have even learned its name. We promise ourselves that one day we will rest, one day we will slow down, one day we will begin to live fully. But one day is a mirage that keeps moving farther away. The Buddha once said, "The trouble is, you think you have time." His words were not meant to frighten, but to awaken us, to remind us that time cannot be owned, only experienced, and that each passing moment is as fluid and untouchable as water flowing in a stream. In this teaching, I will walk with you through 13 gentle reflections shaped by Buddhist wisdom and life itself. Each is a doorway into a deeper way of living, exploring time, relationships, inner stillness, creativity, and the simple treasures we often overlook. This journey is meant to be taken slowly, whether all at once or returned to in your own rhythm. So if you are here now, perhaps with tea warming your hands, let the weight of urgency fall away. Take a deep breath. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be to begin again. Number 1, the illusion of time. As the years pass, something curious begins to happen. In childhood, a summer could feel endless. Days stretched wide and bright, each one a new adventure. The taste of ripe fruit, the laughter at a picnic, the sound of cicadas singing into the night, all of it seemed to last forever. Now, for many of us, entire years seem to pass in the blink of an eye. We turn a page, and suddenly another chapter is gone. What changed? Was it the clock, or was it us? Buddhist teaching reminds us that all things are impermanent, but it also tells us that the way we experience reality is shaped by the mind's restlessness. Time is not a solid river flowing outside of us. It is a sensation, one that expands or contracts depending on how present we are. When we meet life with full awareness, each moment feels rich and spacious. When we move through it distracted and on autopilot, it dissolves before we even notice it was there, like water slipping through open fingers. I once met an elderly woman named Clara during a retreat in the quiet hills of Oregon. She had lived a life filled with milestones, raising 4 children, volunteering in her community, enduring loss and finding joy. Yet, as we shared tea under a maple tree, she looked out over the still water and softly said, "I can't remember most of my life, not because I didn't live it, but because I wasn't truly there." Her words stayed with me. Many of us know this feeling, even if we don't say it aloud. Our days fall into predictable loops. We wake, prepare coffee, glance at the news, move from task to task, errands, conversations, chores that feel familiar and safe. The mind, ever efficient, begins to tune out what it already knows. It records less, and so time feels as if it is slipping away. This is why moments of travel, falling in love, or learning something new seem to last longer. Our awareness is sharpened. But when life becomes routine, time folds in on itself. In Buddhist practice, this fog of familiarity is sometimes called time blindness. The body moves, but the spirit drifts in sleep. The Buddha taught that mindfulness, or sati, should not be limited to meditation cushions. It belongs in every step, every breath, every bite of food. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future, he said. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Simple words, but they ask for a steady and compassionate discipline. The way to slow time is not through grand adventures, but through small awakenings. Invite gentle novelty into your life. Walk a different path on your morning stroll. Cook a dish you have never tasted before. Greet a stranger at the market. Even sitting in a new place at your breakfast table can stir the mind into noticing again. These are not small things. They are acts of kindness toward your own awareness. You might also pause throughout the day, even for 10 seconds to breathe. Feel your feet against the earth. Notice the hum of the world around you. These brief pauses, repeated often, become threads that weave the hours into something whole and memorable. And at day's end, take time to reflect. A few lines in a journal about what you saw, felt, or learned can transform the ordinary into something worth keeping. As one Zen master once said, a day without reflection is like a meal without flavor. The illusion is not that time is fast, but that we believe it is beyond our influence. In truth, when we meet life with awareness, a single breath can hold eternity. Time does not need to be chased. It only needs to be noticed. Number 2, choosing what truly counts. Somewhere in the middle chapters of life, a quiet realization begins to take shape. It rarely arrives with a dramatic moment or a clear announcement. Instead, it drifts in slowly, like the lengthening shadows of late afternoon. We begin to see that many of the things we once chased with urgency may not have mattered as much as we believed. During a training for hospice volunteers many years ago, I met a woman named Helen. She was a retired nurse who had spent decades ushering life into the world and gently accompanying it out. At 72, she chose to spend her days sitting with those in their final weeks, not from duty, but from a deep knowing that there are lessons near the end of life that no classroom or career can teach. She told me something I have never forgotten. In all my years with the dying, she said, no one ever wished for more meetings or bigger paychecks. They wished for people. They wished for peace. They wished for time they never allowed themselves to have. In Buddhism, there is the teaching of right view, the ability to see clearly through the haze of distraction and illusion. One truth it reveals is simple, yet often ignored. Not every demand on our time is worthy of it. Many of us, especially in our busiest years, confuse motion for meaning. We fill our calendars until they overflow, believing that activity equals purpose. But in the end, urgency and importance are not the same. Time has a way of uncovering this truth. It is often only when we look back that we see the real cost: the birthdays we missed, the quiet walks never taken, the moments of kindness we postponed until it was too late. There is a Buddhist reflection known as the 5 recollections. Among them is the reminder, I am of the nature to grow old. I am of the nature to die. All that is dear to me will change and pass away. These words are not meant to bring sorrow. They are meant to awaken us to the treasure of the present moment before it slips from our hands. One way to return to this awareness is through what I call the deathbed view. Picture yourself decades from now, lying in bed in your final days. What would you wish you had done more of? Would you care about the perfectly balanced budget or the spotless kitchen? Or would you long for the time you spent listening to your child's laughter, walking beside an old friend, forgiving someone who once hurt you, and loving without hesitation? Clarity often comes in stillness, Yet the modern world rarely invites us to slow down long enough to feel it. This is why, as we age, we must become guardians of our own attention. We must choose our priorities with care. Here is a simple daily practice. Before the day begins, before the phone and the news and the noise, sit quietly with a pen and paper. Ask yourself, if today were my last, what would truly matter? Write whatever comes. Let these words, not your to-do list, guide you. The Buddha once said, your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it. He was not speaking only of jobs or careers, but of Dharma, your deepest calling. That calling might be growing a garden, comforting a neighbor, or simply watching the sunrise with gratitude for another day of breath and being. Because in the end, it is not the number of tasks we completed that defines a life well lived. It is how deeply we loved, how present we were, and how fully we allowed ourselves to be alive. And the gift is this: we can begin living that way at any moment, even now. Number 3, nurturing the sacred space between hearts. When someone in their later years speaks of old friends, the tone is often different from the way youth talks about companionship. It isn't filled with the buzz of crowds or the energy of endless plans. Instead, it carries a gentle stillness, as if the memories are too delicate to be spoken of loudly. You might hear, "We lost touch," or "I wonder what became of them," and sometimes, the quiet admission, "I wish I had said more before time ran out." In a small Buddhist sangha near San Jose, I met a man named Roy. He was in his mid-80s, tall yet slightly stooped, his hands trembling with the subtle gift of age. During a group reflection on forgiveness, he shared the story of a brother he hadn't spoken to in over 30 years. The quarrel that divided them had been over something too small to even recall clearly, but the hurt had lingered like a shadow. "I've written letters to him," Roy confessed, his voice soft but steady. "But I never found the courage to send them. In Buddhism, there is a timeless truth. Hatred never ends through hatred. It only dissolves through love." Watching Roy, it was clear that what weighed on him wasn't just regret, but the grief of a bond still alive in memory, yet abandoned in practice. All of us carry invisible threads that tie us to others, some bright with warmth, some tangled with hurt, and some frayed until they barely hold. With time, these connections shape the contours of our inner world. For some, there's the sweetness of a partnership that has endured decades. For others, the quiet ache of a friendship that faded not through death, but through distance. And for many, the silent sorrow of realizing that though we were present in body, we were absent in heart. From a Buddhist view, relationships are more than social ties. They are sacred ground where karma is planted and harvested. Every word, every gesture, every silence is a seed. A smile can grow into peace. A withheld apology can leave roots of pain. This is why the Buddha taught the practice of right speech and right intention, not as rules to be followed perfectly, but as reminders to be awake to the impact of our presence. Small acts are never truly small. A kind question, a shared laugh, a moment of undistracted listening. These are the bricks that build connection. The sutras tell the story of Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, who turned against him. Even in betrayal, the Buddha never returned hostility with hostility. He taught his disciples to hold even their adversaries in a mind wide enough for compassion not to condone harm, but to protect one's own heart from the poison of resentment. If you find yourself thinking of someone now, a sibling, a childhood friend, a partner long gone, or a neighbor you once knew well, ask yourself quietly, is there something left unsaid? Could a door still be opened, not to rewrite the past, but to free the present? If the answer feels too far to act upon, begin smaller. Send a brief message, write a letter, whisper a blessing in your heart. Practice metta loving-kindness meditation and let it reach them across the unseen spaces. Relationships aren't shaped only by grand gestures, anniversaries, reunions, formal apologies. They grow most through steady, daily kindness, a call to ask how someone is, remembering a small detail from long ago, or sitting in silence simply to be there. And yes, some bonds may remain closed. Not every fracture can be mended. But peace is still possible because peace does not depend on the other person's response, only on the openness of our own heart. The Dhammapada says, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Let us choose fewer words, but richer ones. Let us love quietly yet deeply. Let us plant kindness wherever our paths cross, for these seeds, even if unseen, will one day bloom." In the end, it is not how many people we have met that defines our lives, but how deeply we showed up for the ones we did. And it is never too late to place one more seed of compassion in the space between hearts. Number 4, rediscovering meaning beyond the clock. There comes a moment after retirement when the rhythm of life shifts. The familiar structure that once held your days, the morning rush, the meetings, the deadlines, the constant hum of responsibility, begins to fade. At first, there's relief. You wake without an alarm. You take trips you once postponed. You savor the freedom you worked so many years to earn. But eventually, something else begins to stir in the quiet. A question, faint at first, begins to echo. Now what? It is not a question of survival, but of meaning, and for many who step into the later chapters of life, it becomes one of the most important questions they will face. I once met a man named Richard, a retired architect from Colorado. For more than 4 decades, he had shaped spaces where life would unfold: schools, hospitals, community centers. His work was meticulous, respected, and enduring. Yet, after he stepped away at 67, he admitted something that lingered with me. "I'm not sure who I am when I'm not building something," he said. It wasn't sadness that colored his voice, but a quiet uncertainty, as though he had drifted out of the harbor without yet finding a new course. In Buddhism, there is the teaching of sankhara, the mental formations that shape our habits, our identities, our constant drive to do, achieve, and become. These patterns can run quietly beneath the surface, directing our lives without ever pausing to ask whether they still serve us. Retirement can be the moment when these old currents slow, offering us a rare opportunity to step back and choose more consciously. It is not the end of purpose. It is the beginning of chosen purpose, a chance to meet ourselves not through roles or titles, but as human beings still capable of offering something meaningful. The Buddha's teaching on right livelihood extends beyond the years of earning a living. It is about living in alignment with values in a way that supports life rather than depleting it. After retirement, that alignment might look different. It might mean mentoring a younger neighbor, writing down your life stories so they're not lost, tending a garden with reverence, or volunteering not to stay busy, but to stay connected to the world around you. I once knew a retired teacher who read aloud to children at the local library every Thursday. She called it her quiet dharma. It wasn't a job, yet it held the same devotion as her years in the classroom. When I stopped giving, she told me, I stopped growing. And here lies the beautiful paradox. Purpose in this stage of life is not about doing more, but about being more present, more open-hearted, more attuned to what truly stirs your spirit, even if no one else sees it. There will be days when the body feels heavier, when the world seems too fast, or when you wonder if you have faded into the background. But your worth is not defined by output. The way you listen, the stories you carry, the silent wisdom you hold, these are gifts as vital as anything you ever produced in your working years. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Just as the great ocean has only one taste, the taste of salt, so too does the Dharma have only one taste, the taste of liberation." At this stage of life, liberation often means releasing the need to prove yourself. It is the freedom of knowing that your worth is not something you chase, but something you embody. You are living proof of endurance, of love, of lessons learned and passed on. So if you find yourself wondering, what is my purpose now? Try asking instead, what makes my heart come alive? Where can I offer my stillness, my care, my presence? Purpose after retirement need not be grand to be profound. Even the smallest acts, sharing soup with a neighbor, lighting incense each morning, sitting beside someone who grieves, can be offerings of the highest kind. Because the most meaningful work you may ever do will not be measured in what you build with your hands, but in what you awaken in the hearts of others, simply by living as the truest version of yourself. Number 5. Honoring the body as a temple of awareness. There comes a season in life when the body speaks more often and more insistently. The knees greet the morning with a creak. The back hums its quiet song when we rise from a chair. Even a short walk can become a slow, deliberate journey. Yet these changes are not punishments. They are invitations, gentle calls to slow down, listen closely, and care more deeply for the home we have lived in all our lives. In Buddhist practice, the body is not seen as a hindrance to awakening, but as the first doorway to it. In the Satipatthana Sutta, this is called Kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body. It is the art of observing the body with kindness rather than judgment, meeting it like an old friend and saying, "Thank you for carrying me this far." I remember meeting a woman named Grace at a mindfulness retreat in Northern California. She was 74, still recovering from hip surgery. For decades, she had been independent and active, hiking, dancing, teaching yoga. But after her surgery, she confessed she felt like a stranger in her own skin. "It's as if my body moved on without telling me," she said with a sad smile. Yet over the course of the retreat, I watched her relationship with her body begin to soften. Each step with her cane became an act of mindfulness. Each breath became a silent offering of gratitude. One morning, after walking meditation, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought I needed to get strong again. But maybe what I really needed was to get kind." That shift from demanding performance to offering compassion rests at the heart of the Buddhist way. The Buddha taught us to treat the body not as a machine to be pushed to its limits, but as a sacred vessel. Aging does not make it less sacred, it makes it more precious. Every line, every slower step, every forgotten name is a living lesson in impermanence. Too often, we speak to our bodies only in commands: push through, work harder, keep going. We ignore fatigue, treat rest as laziness, and mask pain in order to appear strong. But with age, the body begins to speak in a clearer voice. It no longer asks for dominance. It asks for care, not punishment, but presence. A wise Buddhist elder once said, "The body is our first teacher." It reminds us every day that nothing lasts forever. If we listen, we hear not just the truth of impermanence, but the gift within it, the invitation to live more gently, to be here fully, while we can. One of the simplest yet most powerful practices for this stage of life is the body scan meditation. Sit or lie down comfortably, bringing attention slowly to each part of your body, from the soles of your feet to the crown of your head. Not to change anything, but to notice, to thank, to offer tenderness as you would to someone you love deeply. Movement can also be prayer. You do not need marathons or heavy weights. 10 minutes in the morning sun, a few slow stretches before bed, standing barefoot on the earth, letting its steady presence support you. These are not small acts. They are rituals of remembering that life is still flowing through you. The Buddha once said, "To keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise we shall not be able to keep our minds strong and clear." This is not about clinging to youth, but about cultivating the energy that allows us to be present for both joy and sorrow. So if your body is slower now, softer in its strength, accept its pace. See it not as a failing tool, but as a wise companion who has carried you through storms and celebrations, through losses and beginnings, and who still greets you each morning with the silent message, "We are still here. Let's keep going." Perhaps the greatest act of courage in these later years is not in pushing harder, but in loving this body exactly as it is. Number 6, a life that learns and teaches. One of the quiet myths in our culture is that learning belongs to the young, that it ends somewhere after diplomas are handed out, careers are built, and the pace of life slows. But in truth, some of the most profound learning begins when the race to achieve is over, when the striving softens, and curiosity is no longer driven by pressure, but by the heart's quiet hunger to understand. I once attended a Dharma gathering in a small New Mexico Sangha. The teacher was a 92-year-old lay practitioner named Samuel. He began not with a lecture, but with a simple question. What are you learning these days? At first, people chuckled, assuming it was rhetorical, but he leaned forward, repeated it softly, and waited. When no one answered, he smiled gently and said, I'm learning how to be kinder to my fear of forgetting names. The room went still. It wasn't pity that filled the air, but recognition. His honesty was the teaching. His willingness to share vulnerability carried a wisdom no textbook could hold. In Buddhism, the word prajna speaks to this kind of wisdom, not the accumulation of facts, but the clarity born from living. It grows from heartbreak and healing, from the courage to stand up again after being knocked down, from the countless quiet moments in which we've chosen compassion over anger. And here is something beautiful: you don't have to be a monk or scholar to be a teacher. Some of the most meaningful teachers are still learning themselves. The Buddha often reminded his disciples that sharing what we've learned is not about claiming authority, but about walking together on the same path. My friend Linda is a perfect example. At 76, she began guiding meditation at her local senior center. She had no certification, no trips to faraway temples, no formal titles. What she had was 20 years of daily mindfulness practice and the willingness to share it. I don't fix people, she told me. I just tell them what helped me breathe again. This is what learning can look like later in life, not an effort to master everything, but an act of generosity. Sometimes the student and teacher are the same person. You might learn a new instrument, write down the stories of your youth, explore Buddhist texts with fresh eyes, or simply learn how to live with a changing body and a changing world with patience and grace. Even the Buddha's own name, Siddhartha, can be read as one who is on the path to understanding, not one who has finished learning, but one who remains a student of life. This identity has no age limit. One gentle practice you can try is Dharma sharing. You don't need a stage or a formal audience. It might be as small as telling a neighbor, I heard something today that really touched me, or offering a quote that gave you strength when someone is struggling. Every time we share, we pass on a spark that might ignite light in someone else's path, even if we never see it. And if you ever think, I have nothing worth teaching, remember this. The person who remembers what it feels like to struggle becomes the most compassionate guide. Sometimes the most healing words we can offer are not instructions, but recognition, to look someone in the eye and say, I understand. I've been there too. So keep learning, not to fill a gap, but to keep your spirit alive and expanding. Keep teaching, not to prove your knowledge, but to offer your presence as a lantern for those walking behind you. And above all, keep telling your story, even if your voice trembles. The world does not need more perfect experts. It needs real human beings willing to speak their truth, so that others may find the courage to speak theirs. Number 7. Finding calm in the heart of feeling emotions are like weather in the mind, shifting, swirling, and sometimes crashing without warning. Some days they pass softly, like light clouds moving across a spring sky. Other days, they arrive like a summer storm, full of thunder and sudden rain. As the years pass, many of us expect that age should bring immunity to such waves, as if wisdom means we stop feeling anger, grief, fear, or longing. But life doesn't work that way, and perhaps it isn't meant to. I remember a retreat in the mountains where I met an 81-year-old man named Arthur. He carried himself with quiet dignity, always present for the meditation sessions. But one afternoon, he didn't appear in the hall. Later, I found him sitting alone by the retreat garden, tears on his cheeks. When I gently asked what was wrong, he whispered, I just remembered something hurtful I said to my wife 40 years ago. It came back, out of nowhere. The past has a way of sending us letters long after we think the correspondence has ended. Old emotions, even those we believe are resolved, can surface unexpectedly. And when they do, we are given an opportunity. Not to bury them, not to scold ourselves, but to meet them with quiet presence. In Buddhist understanding, emotions are not enemies. They are visitors, temporary mind states, arising from causes and conditions. The Buddha taught that intense emotions often have a natural lifespan of only moments if we don't keep feeding them with stories and resistance. The first wave may be beyond our control, but what happens after that is where our freedom begins. One way to walk through emotional storms is the practice known as RAIN, widely shared today by teacher Tara Brach, but rooted in centuries of Buddhist mindfulness. Recognize what is happening. Allow it to be present. Investigate with gentle curiosity. Nurture with kindness. When sadness or regret arises, place your hand over your heart and breathe. Recognize, this is sorrow. Allow, it's okay to feel this. Investigate, where do I feel it in my body? Nurture, may I hold this with compassion? This is not weakness. This is courage, the willingness to stand in the rain without running for cover. Even the Buddha wept. He grieved for those who suffered. He offered comfort to the sick. He reminded his disciples that to love deeply is not a distraction from awakening. It is part of awakening itself. Yet we live in a culture that praises emotional control, that tells us to stay strong or move on. But real strength often looks different. It is the quiet act of holding your feelings as you would hold a crying child, not silencing them, but letting them be until they soften. I once spoke with a woman in her 60s who told me, I spent my whole life trying not to feel too much. Now I let myself feel everything, and strangely, I've never been more at peace. She had not escaped pain. She had simply stopped resisting it. Avoiding difficult emotions is like leaving unopened letters at the door of your heart. They pile up, becoming heavier over time. But one honest conversation, one act of self-compassion, can open them and let the air back in. So let this be the season where you stop apologizing for feeling, where you no longer hide your tears or swallow your truth. Let it be the time you can sit with joy, fear, sadness, and say, you have a place here. The Buddha said, as a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. And yet, even a rock feels the wind upon its surface. That is the balance, not to be untouched, but to remain grounded. Peace does not mean the storm will never come. It means that when the rain falls, you do not lose yourself in it. Number 8, the wealth of a spacious heart. From an early age, many of us are quietly taught that a good life is one of accumulation, more comfort, more security, more possessions. A larger home, a newer car, a retirement fund that promises to soften uncertainty. There is nothing inherently wrong with any of these. The trouble begins when we confuse what we own with who we are, when the pursuit of money starts consuming the very thing we hoped it would safeguard our time. I once sat across from a retired lawyer named Charles. His career had been long and successful, decades of sharp thinking, relentless work, and the respect of his peers. His accounts were full, yet his days were empty. No hobbies, no close companions, no moments of shared laughter. Looking out toward the garden, he said quietly, I thought I was building a life. I realize now I was building walls. His words hung in the air, heavy with truth. The Buddha never taught that wealth was wrong. He welcomed kings, merchants, and lay followers who offered support for the Sangha. But he spoke often about upadana, clinging. The danger is not in the coin itself, but in believing that anything we possess can protect us from the impermanence of life. As the Dhammapada says, the wise, understanding the fleeting nature of wealth, give freely and live without grasping. In modern terms, this invites a simple question. Is the way you earn and spend money giving you more life, or quietly taking it from you? Many spend their strongest, healthiest years chasing income, only to spend that income later trying to reclaim the connection, peace, and time they lost in the chase. But time is not like money. It cannot be stored, it cannot be earned back, and none of us knows how much we have left. Researchers now speak of time affluence, the sense of having enough time for what matters. Curiously, as income grows, this sense often shrinks. More money can bring more commitments, more upkeep, more demands. A bigger house means more to maintain. A luxury car means more to insure and protect. Each new purchase, as a monk once told me, comes with a quiet cost. It buys a portion of your attention. Something changes, however, when we begin valuing experiences over possessions. A walk at sunset, a trip to see the sea, a simple dinner with someone we love. These do not fade. They grow sweeter in memory, and they ask little from our wallets. One woman I knew had a tradition. Each month, instead of buying something for herself, she used that same amount to create joy for someone else. Flowers on a neighbor's doorstep, a surprise lunch for a friend, a small gift to a community shelter. Nothing in my closet makes me feel as rich as that, she told me. Buddhism teaches that real wealth is measured in citta vimutti, the freedom of the heart. To live in a way that nothing owns you. To be able to say no to what drains your spirit and yes to what nourishes it. This is not austerity. It is abundance of a deeper kind, the abundance of not needing more to feel complete. The Buddha's financial wisdom can be distilled into a simple rhythm. Live with enough. Share the rest. Not from guilt, but from liberation. Because when we loosen our grip on money, we discover how tightly it had been holding us. So pause and ask yourself, what is enough for me? If I had less money, but more time, how would I live? Where have I mistaken a busy life for a rich one? You may not be able to add more years to your life, but you can bring more life into the years you already have. In the end, it will not be your balance sheet you remember. It will be the laughter you shared, the hands you held, the moments you gave without hesitation. And those, unlike anything you can buy, are the treasures that remain. Number 9, letting the soul speak through creation. In the later chapters of life, something subtle and precious often begins to stir a reawakening of creativity. Not the kind that rushes to meet deadlines or aims to impress, but a softer, truer kind. A longing to shape beauty out of stillness, to let the inner life take form simply because it's there. Yet many people over 60 quietly believe creativity is for someone else, for the young, the trained, the gifted. Painting for artists, music for professionals, writing for those with published books. But time, if we listen closely, whispers a different truth. Creativity belongs to anyone who is still alive enough to notice the world. I once knew a retired mail carrier named Martha. She had raised 4 children, risen before dawn for decades, and spent her life in service to others. At 71, newly widowed and alone, she began painting on scraps of cardboard she found behind the grocery store. At first, she said it was just to keep her hands busy. But soon, her garage bloomed with colors, sunsets spilling across hillsides, flocks of birds suspended mid-flight. When I asked if she had always loved painting, she paused, then smiled softly. "I think I always loved noticing," she said. "I just didn't know it had somewhere to go." In Buddhist thought, creativity is not separate from the path. It can be the path when approached with presence. The way we arrange flowers in a vase, stir soup in a pot, or hum quietly to ourselves can be mindfulness in motion. Each act of making is a form of meditation. The Zen poet Basho once wrote, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." Your creativity may have been growing quietly for years, hidden beneath the routines and obligations of life, waiting for you to finally notice and tend it. This is the time to return to the neglected guitar in the closet, the quilt left unfinished, the stories you once scribbled on scraps of paper and tucked away. What stops us is rarely lack of time. More often, it's fear of judgment, of doing it wrong, of being too late. But the Dharma reminds us that now is always the right moment. The lotus blooms in the muddiest waters, and beauty often arrives after long seasons of silence. Zen speaks of beginner's mind, the openness to possibility that is unburdened by the need to be perfect. Later life is the perfect place to rediscover this state, not because we are naive, but because we have lived enough to let go of proving ourselves. Perhaps you once wanted to sing, but were told your voice wasn't good enough. Perhaps you loved to dance but felt self-conscious. Perhaps you dreamed of writing but feared the blank page. Let this be the season you reclaim those forgotten joys, not for recognition, but for the quiet satisfaction of being alive. Even the simplest acts can become sacred expressions, arranging stones in your garden, baking bread for a neighbor, curating a photo album with handwritten notes. These are not just hobbies. They are offerings to life, saying, I am still here, and I still have something beautiful to give. If inspiration feels distant, begin anyway. Creativity often starts like a stiff door that hasn't been opened in years. The first push might be awkward, but soon it swings free. And don't let perfection steal the joy. As one Buddhist teacher said, a bowl with cracks lets the light through. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are simply in a fuller season, with roots that run deeper and petals that open more slowly. So paint, sing, write, dance in the fading light of evening. Tell your stories to the wind. Create not because you must, but because your spirit remembers how. In doing so, you will discover that you are not simply making art. You are the art, a living brushstroke, a poem that breathes, a song that time itself carries in its heart. Number 10. Guarding the flame of your energy. As the years pass, time is no longer the only treasure we count. Another becomes just as precious energy. Not only the physical stamina to move through the day, but the quieter, sustaining energy that allows us to meet life with clarity, warmth, and steady attention. You can have long, open days and still feel empty if your energy is scattered or constantly given away to what drains you. I once met a man named Elias at a meditation retreat in Oregon. He was 73, gentle in speech, and had retired early so he could enjoy the years ahead with his wife. But soon after, she passed unexpectedly. He told me one afternoon, I have plenty of time, but I don't have the will to do anything with it. I just feel tired. He was not ill. He was simply worn out from decades of putting himself last, from years of doing and giving without pausing to replenish his own well. The Buddha spoke of right effort as a part of the Eightfold Path. Here, effort does not mean pushing harder. It means using your energy wisely, offering it only to what nourishes and uplifts the heart. Like a gardener choosing where to water, it is not about doing more. It is about tending to what matters most. One truth often overlooked in modern life is that rest is not laziness. It is a sacred form of care. The body, like the earth, needs seasons of stillness. Fields must lie fallow before they can bloom again. In the same way, our minds and bodies need moments of pure being, free from the demand to produce. Yet even in retirement, many carry the habit of overdoing. Rest feels like something to be earned, rather than something we are allowed. But the Dharma reminds us that clarity and compassion grow from stillness. The Buddha once said, just as a candle cannot burn without fire, people cannot live without a spiritual life. And the fire of that spiritual life is not constant motion, it is presence. A small daily practice can help. Before beginning any task, pause for a breath and ask, does this give me life, or does it take it away? Your body will tell you the truth if you listen closely. Some things replenish us walking among trees, sharing a laugh, reading quietly in the morning light. Others drain us too much news, draining conversations, constant multitasking. You can also protect energy by simplifying decisions. Monks wear the same robes each day, not just for tradition, but to save mental energy for what matters. You might choose simple, nourishing meals or reduce daily choices so you can give your attention to what truly lifts your spirit. There is also a gentle wisdom in allowing yourself to be bad at things that do not serve your path. You do not need to be skilled at everything or say yes to every request. Choosing where not to invest energy is as important as deciding where you will. Mindful recovery is another form of energy stewardship. A short nap, a slow cup of tea, 5 minutes watching sunlight move across a wall. These are not luxuries, they are ways of coming back to yourself. A monk I once studied with in Thailand told me, meditation is not about stillness of the body. It is about returning to the place where you stopped listening. You can meditate while folding laundry, sweeping the floor, or stirring soup. Presence, not perfection, is the key. So ask yourself with kindness, what gives me back to myself? Then begin there, because the fullness of life is not measured by how much you do, but by how alive you feel as you do it. Spend your energy on kindness. Reserve your strength for love. Let the rest drift away like autumn leaves, clearing the space for a new spring to come. Number 11. The gentle strength of belonging. Loneliness wears more than one face. Sometimes it is loud, echoing through empty rooms, showing up in birthdays no one remembers, or in calls that never come. Other times it is quieter, almost polite. It slips into the empty chair beside you at dinner. It lingers in the silence after you say, "I'm fine." As the years pass, this softer kind of loneliness can settle in like an uninvited but familiar guest. Yet human beings were never meant to walk the path alone. Even the Buddha, after awakening beneath the Bodhi tree, did not remain in solitude. He traveled, he taught, and he gathered a sangha, a community of monks, nuns, and lay followers. They came together not to worship him, but to help one another along the path toward liberation. I remember visiting a small Buddhist center in Vermont, hidden among tall pines and quiet lakes. The temple was modest, the gathering small, a few elders sharing tea after meditation. There were no formal robes that day, no chants, just soft voices, gentle laughter, and the simple comfort of belonging. One woman, Ruth, smiled and told me, "I don't come here for the teachings, not really. I come because someone remembers my name." That stayed with me. Because belonging is not only about being around people, it is about being seen. It is knowing that someone notices when you are absent, remembers how you like your tea, and asks about your well-being with genuine care. In Buddhist tradition, the Sangha is one of the three jewels, alongside the Buddha and the Dharma. Community is not an afterthought, it is a treasure. The Buddha once said that admirable friendship, companionship, and camaraderie make up the whole of the holy life. Wisdom may grow in solitude, but compassion flourishes in connection. In much of modern society, especially in the West, independence is praised as strength. We are told to be self-reliant, to age gracefully without leaning on others. As a result, many suffer quietly, believing that seeking company is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, we need one another not only for help, but for joy, laughter, shared silence, and the simple act of being together. I once met a retired nurse named Gloria, who hosted tea circles in her backyard every Sunday. There was no program or structure. Neighbors of all ages would gather, talk, share stories, or simply sit in silence. "It's not a support group," she told me, "but we all leave feeling supported." Community does not require grand gestures. It can start with a phone call, a letter, an invitation to share a walk, or a simple message to someone you have not spoken to in a while. Every act of connection is like rain to a thirsty garden. It nourishes what might otherwise remain unseen. If your circle has grown smaller over time, know that it is never too late to plant new seeds. A conversation with a neighbor might one day become a deep friendship. Joining a local book club, meditation circle, or gardening group can open doors you did not know were still waiting for you. Belonging is not about having a large network. It is about showing up as you are and allowing yourself to be seen in your wholeness. The path of practice is not only inward, it is also built in the space between people. Every kind word, every moment of attentive listening, every shared pause of stillness becomes a bridge between hearts. So reach out, offer your time, your attention, your presence. Do it not to get something in return, but simply to be part of the quiet weaving that holds the human spirit together. In doing so, you do not just join a community. You become the thread that keeps it alive. Number 12. The quiet art of seeing clearly. Some truths arrive like thunder, sudden and impossible to ignore. Others come quietly, unfolding slowly like light spilling across a wooden floor at dawn. This slower kind of clarity is often a gift of time, yet it does not come automatically with age. It must be tended to like a garden, or it can be overgrown by old habits and unexamined fears. The Buddha spoke of moha, the cloud of delusion that distorts our perception. He also offered its antidote, vipassana, the practice of seeing clearly. Clear seeing is not about gathering more information. It is about removing the fog until what remains is simple and true. I once spoke with a retired librarian named Janice, who described how her way of making choices had changed. I used to react to everything, she told me. If someone spoke sharply, I would either shut down or fire back. My decisions were driven by whatever I felt in the moment. Now I pause and ask myself, what is actually true right now? And sometimes the truth is not what I first imagined. That pause, that stillness between what happens and how we respond, is where freedom lives. Many of us spend our lives reacting. A thought arises, and we follow it. A feeling appears, and we obey it. The Buddha taught that our suffering is shaped not only by what happens to us, but also by our unexamined reactions. With our thoughts, we make the world, he said. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows like a shadow. Discernment becomes especially important in later life. You may no longer be choosing a career or raising children, but you are still making decisions every day. You choose where to place your attention, how to respond to changes in your health, how to nurture or release relationships, and how to spend the energy that is now more precious than ever. Buddhist psychology offers many tools for this. One is second-order thinking, which asks not just, what happens if I do this, but what will happen after that, and what ripples might follow. Saying yes to something that feels polite in the moment may lead to resentment later. Avoiding a conversation may create a debt of unspoken words that grows heavier over time. Another tool is inverse thinking. Instead of asking, how do I find peace? You ask, how am I creating my own restlessness? It takes honesty to look in that mirror, but the clarity it brings is worth it. A teacher once told me, most of the time we are not choosing wisely, we are choosing what feels comfortable. That can be difficult to hear, but it is freeing when you understand that wisdom often asks you to step beyond comfort, not into suffering, but into truth. And truth, even when it unsettles us at first, always leaves the air cleaner. To cultivate clear seeing, begin by slowing down. Practice mindfulness in small things. Wash the dishes without rushing. Listen without preparing your answer. Walk not to reach a destination, but to feel each step. Ask better questions of yourself, not what do I feel like doing, but what choice honors my deepest values? Not what do others expect of me, but what will bring peace to my heart? And when clarity does not come right away, do not force it. Let the mind settle until the reflection becomes clear. Wisdom rarely arrives with a shout. More often it speaks in a whisper. It grows from many small choices made with care. It knows when to speak and when to be silent, when to act and when to wait, when to say yes and when to step back with grace. If you are unsure of your next step, resist the pull to decide too quickly. Sit quietly, light a candle, Allow the mind to grow still. In that stillness, you will feel the answer that does not come from fear or pride, but from the quiet knowing within you. Like a lamp sheltered from the wind, that is the light of prajna. That is wisdom. Conclusion. As we reach the end of this journey together, I invite you to pause for a moment. Let the words you have heard settle, not as ideas to be stored away, but as seeds planted in the heart. Some may bloom quickly, others may rest quietly until the right season. That is the way of true wisdom. We have walked through reflections on time, relationships, purpose, health, creativity, and the quiet art of clear seeing. Each teaching is not meant to add more to your to-do list. It is meant to help you let go of what no longer serves you, so you can step more lightly into the life you have now. The Buddha reminded us that the path is not walked all at once. It is taken step by step, breath by breath, choice by choice. Even the smallest shift toward mindfulness, compassion, or presence is a victory. You do not need to transform everything at once. You only need to begin, here, now, with what is in front of you. May you leave this space today, carrying a little calmer in your heart, a little more clarity in your mind, and a little more kindness in your actions. These are the treasures that cannot be lost. If this journey has touched something in you, I invite you to keep walking the path with me. There are more stories, more teachings, and more moments of quiet reflection waiting to be shared. You can support this work by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications, so you will know when a new teaching is released. If you found value here, consider sharing this video with someone who might need a gentle reminder of their own wisdom. And before you go, I would love to hear from you in the comments. What insight or reflection stayed with you most from today's teaching? Your words may be exactly what someone else needs to read. Until next time, may you walk in peace, live with compassion, and meet each moment as if it were your first and your last.